Thanks for having me. Just a quick introduction of myself. Scott Sewell, been with Microsoft for 8 years. I have transitioned recently, well, actually, it was July last year, now that I think about it, um, out of the Dynamics and Fabric side of the house and into a internally facing corporate a role for the corporate side of the house. But before this last year, I was on the Fabric team, Fabric Cat team for 5 years. And before that, I was a global black belt on the dynamic side for a few years. And then before that, I was in the field delivering solutions to end customers and partners for 13 years. So I've been using the dynamic CRM side of things for 21, 22 years now. So I am older than dirt, and I know where a lot of the bodies are buried. So it's a good space to be in, and lots of stuff's going on. But over the time, I kept finding that the best way to be able to show off the data that I had was through being able to expose it through Power BI or the reporting tools. We got this really rich data in there. Well, fast forward. So I spent a lot of time building Power BI reports and helping users or helping customers and helping other people in Microsoft try to build reports off of Power BI, which was when you're trying to build a report from Dynamics into Power BI, it can be a little challenging. I mean, I won't sugarcoat it because I'm not on that side of the house anymore. It can be a little challenging because the data, it's all in there, but it's not always easy to get to. It's not always easy to pull the data out and connect with it, especially in a performance sort of a way. We've got some tools available to us, but even as we got further into tools like having Fabric Link, where we pulled the data off of Dynamics, or created a Delta Lake that we would populate with the data from Dynamics, you put it in that lake, and there's still a lot of work you need to do in order to clean that data up. About 3 months ago, the guy that I work for now, brilliant guy, no background in Power BI and whatnot. He had built a report, a Power BI report on Dynamics, and he came to me and said, "Hey, this thing is not working very well. Can you help me fix it?" And so I pulled it up, and I saw in it all the classic mistakes of problems that you build a Power BI report over Dataverse data, all the classic mistakes that people make. And I spent the last 5 years prior to that trying to help people overcome that and get around here's all the little nuances, here's the little tricks you do to make the data flow smoother. How do you get it in? How do you get it out faster? How do you keep your refreshes from being awful? And then how do you get the data in? And I actually build it up to a visualize so you can visualize the data in Power BI and be able to work with it. So that's kind of what I was spun. So I got his report and I thought, oh crap, this thing is just awful. I'm going to wind up like I've been doing for 100 years before that, just rebuild the Power BI dashboard, rebuild the queries in it and all that, the standard stuff. However, in the last 6 months, I mean, nobody can go through a Microsoft conversation without saying the word AI 14 times. But really in the last 5, 6 months, the amount of capabilities that have come into our hands with the AI side of things has been dramatic. Like I said, I've been doing this for 20 plus years, actually about 30 years. And I feel like the last 5 or 6 months, things have changed faster for me and for the people around me than they did in my first 10 years in the field. And just for background, I do not come from a development background. I'm not a straight up developer like probably many of you are. I can write SQL code all day. I can write SQL statements all day long. Have no problem with that. But beyond a little bit of JScript, that was not going to be my area to work in. But things have changed so quickly And, if you want to call it AI assisted coding or vibe coding, whatever you want to call it, has kind of leapfrogged into the front of what's going on. And I wanted to share with you just a little bit about how that journey has um, uh, worked for me or transformed for me and how it can apply for you. Last summer, my wife teaches personal finance at the local university here, and she had a need to she wanted a calculator that she could use, an on-screen calculator that she could use to help teach her students how to work certain problems on this antiquated HP 12C calculator. And I had never touched vibe coding before. I'd never crossed over that gap. But this team that I was working with, the lead I was working with said, hey, you ought to try it. So I did. And honestly, I've never been as dumbfounded as I was to see how much I could accomplish using these Copilot, using Claude Code, using all the tools. If I could just say, here's what I want, and here's what I want, how I want it to work, and here's some reference material, I could produce something pretty incredible pretty quickly. The specifics of this calculator are not that important, but I will tell you, I basically found an online manual to an HP 12C. By the way, anybody worked in the finance side, mortgages, whatever, this thing's been around for like 30 years, the HP 12C. It's kind of one of the finance bros calculators they run around with. Anyway, I found a copy of the HP 12C manual online, a PDF of it, and basically went to Copilot using Copilot inside of VS Code and said, I need you to build me a copy of this calculator, read the documentation, and then build a simulator that my wife can use in her personal finance class to teach how to use this calculator. I teach her students how to use this particular calculator. The very first version was usable. It was kind of ugly, but it was usable. And it really shocked me as to how fast I was able to get from nothing to something. Then I just kept saying, oh, I need you to keep track of the steps that users are going through and keep a little log on the right-hand side so that we can see what they've done over time as they make changes. So I started adding features to it. I started saying, oh, I want you to include things like a FAQ, and here's a document that has practice questions in it that I found. Use those, come up with new practice questions, and then give the user something that they can work through to understand. Again, the actual specifics of the calculator, not important. The fact is, I went from someone who was not a programmer, I still don't consider myself a programmer. I'm not a software engineer, but I was creating really strong, really usable code that fit a specific use case that I needed. And I set up my wife's calculator, and then we also set up some mortgage calculators and those things using that really is for the teaching purposes. So we wanted it laid out a specific way and give lessons for the students and all. So that was my kind of step into the fray. But then when the Power BI side of it came up and the Dataverse side, like I said, my manager came up and said, hey, I have this calculator. It was really kind of my understanding of realizing that I really should be taking the knowledge that I have or the experience that I have, not worrying about the fact that I don't code, but I understand the domain knowledge and understand what I needed. I understand what was frustrating me or what would frustrate a customer. And as long as I could articulate that, Claude or Copilot or whatever I was happen to be using, it could turn my articulation of the problem into something I could work with, something I could build off of. My first project, like I said, was the code. I really started with this process of saying, here's what I'm trying to do. Here's the boundaries or here's the constraints. It needs to be able to do this. It's for this audience. It's it needs to be able to check for this kind of an error. And then what does the outcome look like? What am I describing that it needs to be on the other side of it? The better I could articulate that, and also the better I could show examples of what I'm trying to do, the better I could actually turn something into reality. Again, I know that the whole AI buzzword, it's buzzword bingo these days, and I don't have anything to sell about AI, but I can tell you that it has transformed the way I approach problems with Dynamics and with Power BI. Um, I really feel like, as a person who came out of the implementation side, but not a development side, when I ran into development issues, I would have to go to my development team, especially when I was with a partner, and I would say, "Hey, I've got this problem for a customer. They need help with this thing. Can you help me find a solution to this? Can you help build a solution?" And we would go back and forth. They would write specs, and I would review the specs, and I would try to write or try to fix them, and back and forth. Finally, get a quote on how much it would be. Get the customer to sign up for it. 3 or 4 weeks later, we're getting our first version of the code back, and it's terrible. We have to modify. Have to say, no, that's not what we needed. We needed this, or you may say, hey, this is great, but there's this one other thing that we ought to add to it in order to make it better. But I was always on the other side of the wall from that. I couldn't ever cross over, and I always had to go bring donuts into the office or buy coffee for everybody and say, hey, I really need your help with this. I feel like this whole AI coding change that's happened is like we've stolen fire from the gods. It's given us a chance that mortals like me can, and like you can, tackle really interesting problems and bring solutions, as long as you can bring to it the understanding and the appreciation of what you want. What do you need? What is it? What are you frustrated with? Do you have an example of what good might look like? If you can bring that into the conversation and you can just articulate it, the code part is now table stakes. That's just simple. It's a matter of just saying, hey, here's what I'm asking for. And it's the power is dramatic. But at the same time, it's given everybody the ability to generate lots of useless code. And the AI slop is real and will grow continuously as we go. So I do want to call out that even though there's a lot of AI slop that's coming out and people just going, hey, I vibe coded this in one sentence, or I create a new copy of Minecraft, or whatever it is they do, you as a professional, the better you can start saying, here's what I know, here's what I can bring to the conversation, and the better you can articulate and think your way through what is it that would be good for this customer, what is it that would make my life easier, your domain expertise becomes the differentiator. So exploit that domain expertise. Like I said, I was coming from this perspective of Dataverse and Power BI. I have this, there's a Venn diagram, and there's tens of us that like Dataverse and Power BI, or spend a lot of time in Dataverse and Power BI. Literally tens of us. But it's when I took a Dataverse problem to a Power BI expert back 8 or 9 years ago when I first started on Power BI, I would come in and say, hey, Dataverse is not a database. It's got data and rich metadata. And my Power BI expert would say, well, okay, just give me a list of connection strings and tables and just tell me what tables are, and I'll get it for you. And I would come back and say, well, there's actually a whole lot of noise. There's lots of fields, lots of tables, lots of stuff that you ignore. And they would say, all right, whatever, just can I connect to it with SQL? And then I have this conversation, I said, well, hey, I know and love my relational database. I know my tables and attributes and relationships. Oh my, I love them. And the Power BI person would say, well, it's a star schema in Power BI. You go that way or you suffer. Um, and so as we get a little further into it, I would say, all right, well, DAX is getting really hard for me, the programming language in Power BI. It's getting really hard, and my performance is awful. And the Power BI person would come back and go, wait, Dataverse is really not a database. It's got all this metadata. So we're kind of like come back to full circle where I started from. But it was because we both came at it from different data domain expertise, and we were trying to talk to each other with that. This is where you, as an expert in whatever the area that you're an expert in, and you absolutely have expertise in something, experience that other people don't have, if you can bring that forward, you can actually bring solutions out that other people can't bring. But you've got to be able to articulate what the real problem is. I can't stress enough understanding what good is, understanding what you feel like is important and what looks good, what makes for a good solution. Incredibly important. And there's a lot of people who are not spending any time on that. They throw out some slop, and that's all it is. It's just some slop that they create. But the expertise that you have is irreplaceable. Working through that, understanding where it happens, what does a user experience, and how does it go on. So I want to switch gears for a minute and just articulate again, this is an experience that you have, and I'll show you how I translated that experience that I had working on Power BI and Dataverse into a real solution. By the way, I'm going to drop my chat window. Let me see if I can open up the chat here and drop this into the chat just so you have access to my repo, because all this is on my repo. One of the tools that I started in on was this Dataverse to Power BI utility. And I really started in the idea of saying, hey, I know how to build Power BI reports. I know how to build them on Dataverse. What if I kind of took that experience and that knowledge, that domain expertise, and tried to automate it, tried to turn it into something that could be reused by other people? And I did that really. And again, I don't, if you look over here, the contributors are Copilot and Claude is not listed there, but Claude too. And 95% of this is in C#, and I don't write C#. I can't read C#, but I could work with Copilot and say, here's what I need to do. It would produce something. I'd test it and say, yeah, that's close. Here's what's different about it. Let me repo it again, and work our way through the process, and ultimately came up with something that was really strong. Built a Power BI tool, and I'll show you what it looks like here. It was really coming in and saying, I need to be able to interact with this. And let me go to my Claude code here. Yeah, so here's an existing chat that was going on. But yeah, so like here's an example where I'm going, okay, I need to update my release notes. And then it goes through and gives updates and keeps track of my change log. But this whole process was like I found documentation on how to build a XRM toolbox utility like this. And by taking that documentation, combining that with the knowledge of what I wanted it to be, I built out a utility that I'm really proud of. Actually, I won't shy away from saying this is not something I expected that I would be able to do. And I don't know whether I can take credit for it, because all the code was written by the AI. It was just me saying, here's what I need, here's what it needs to do. And here are the best practices that I want the code to implement, so that when a user uses this utility, it takes those best practices and implements them by default for them. For example, I know that we talked earlier, not everybody's a Power BI, has spent a lot of time in Power BI, but there's just some general ideas I might point out. Things like A good Power BI model starts with a fact table right there in the center using the old Kimball methodology. Starts with a fact table and then works its way out into the dimensions around it. So I took that idea and said, all right, let's start with a solution that says, here's your opportunity. That's going to be my fact table. It's going to be the central transaction table. And I want to work out and say, well, here's the campaign that's related to it. Here's the account or the contact, or here's the person who owns that. And I can connect the dots and work my way out by that. But again, that's actually a kind of helping the user by leading them down the path towards a best practice and giving them something that if they follow that path, they get a much better result than the default of, let me open up Power BI and point it to Dataverse and just get the flood of everything that comes off the fire hose at me. Once I did that, I started, the first version of it was really, really simple, but then I started saying, okay, now I want to say, all right, maybe I want to include relationships between tables or relationships to other entities, or I want to filter things. Maybe I need to include a date table. That's just a common thing I need to have as a date table. Power BI lets you write to the data model using this TIMDAL format now, the tabular model definition language, just for fun. It lets me write this, but now all of this is now being generated automatically because I'm looking at the Dataverse metadata and saying, what the application's looking at the metadata and says, okay, I know you want the opportunity table. Let me look at the metadata. I can see what the names of the tables, the fields are. I can see what the relationships are to other entities. And so I can take that, the application is now taking that and constructing a query for it. I mean, this is really what when my friend that I work for brought this to me. This is where I was about to start. I was about to jump in and write this because I've been writing these for the last 5 years. It's not a problem. I can write this in my sleep. But now I built a utility that writes it so that he can build and build his own. And others are using it. I know that I've worked with some Fortune 100 companies, some big consulting organizations that have said, great, this actually picks up, we can put our junior coders on there and they can get moving faster than if they have to wait to find a resource on the bench that can help them do this one specific thing that only 6 people in the organization know how to do. It really has democratized this and made it possible. When we get past this, we can look at it and say, hey, well, let's go ahead and build it. Once I build it, it goes ahead and builds a semantic model. Let me go ahead and generate it, and it tells me what's changed since the last time I worked on it. And hopefully this will work. Let's go and run it. And it builds a model, and it'll open up inside of Power BI. But again, it's really this process, and again, the specifics of that particular tool. If you are using Dataverse and using Power BI, I encourage you to try it out. It's incredibly helpful, incredibly fast to get your first data model up and running and get it clean and organized. And a lot of things that it does for you right away. Let me go and refresh the data. Yeah. So a couple of things it's doing for us is it goes ahead and says, let me take the metadata and the schema from Dataverse, combine that automatically for the user. You don't have to fool with it. And so fields that would be have a funky schema name. I know if you're DBA, that's not a problem, but for the end user, they want a value that looks more friendly to them, something that they can understand. And this actually takes that, combines the metadata from the application with the schema name from SQL, combines that, rewrites it so that it is actually presented by default as a friendly user environment, a friendly user UI for them. It does go ahead and build the data model for them by building the relationships between things. And there's a couple of things that it points out. Let's see, I don't know if I have any of these are required. Yeah, none of these fields are actually required. So I'll fake it here. there's a couple of little tricks that happen. Like, for instance, we'll say that we'll work off of the user. Um, if the relationship is a required relationship in Dataverse, that's part of the metadata that the application says, hey, you always have to have a user if you're building an opportunity. Well, part of what's happening here is I've actually taken that information and saying, let's see if I've got the relationship editor, and yeah, that's because this is not in that mode. I basically can take ideas from it and make them, I can hard code them as required, or hard code them as required and enforce referential integrity. And that turns the join into an inner join as opposed to a left join, and your performance runs out better. It's just little tricks like that that somebody who's starting out with Dataverse, they're going to stumble over that. Eventually, they'll find it in the documentation, but their first few experiences are going to be terrible. And in that process, when we look at the transformation of what's going on, there's a couple of little small things that I've done here to make the process friendlier for the end user. Like I go ahead and organize their parameters and their facts into folders. That's not a technical requirement. It's just something it's nice, it's neat. It's a little uptight on my part. I know, I'll admit that. It's a little uptight, but it does help the end user have a better experience up front. It's little tricks you can add to it that make it a much better experience. And again, I'm just taking my domain expertise and saying, okay, here's what I know and here's what I want for, if I were stepping in as a new user, this is what I would want it to do for me. And then articulating that to the application or to the vibe code using VS Code or Claude Code, whatever it is, and just working your way through that. The version that I did 5 months ago, it was kind of rough, but honestly, the models in the last 3 months have gotten so much better and so much faster. It's really shocking as to what we can do now, how fast it can move. You'll probably see people who'll do, if you watch Hanselman's amazing, he'll do some stuff. It really gives you some inspiration, that stuff that he's doing. There are plenty of people who are just kind of, they're on the bandwagon and they're touting their expertise or whatever. That's fine. There's always going to be some of that. I'll say from my perspective as somebody who comes into it, was a little bit apprehensive, a little timid coming into it, just to be honest. A little bit like a little imposter syndrome going on. It's unlocked some things and some ability and surface area of things that I can bring solutions to that honestly I just never thought would be possible. And I want to challenge, encourage, and set some expectations for you that it's really amazing what you can do. But the best thing is just start with something that pisses you off, something that's annoying, and try to build a little solution for it. Build it as the other day, my wife had I was producing something for her. She was going to be reviewing it, and the code sped out a markdown file, just .md. My wife doesn't care what an MD file, a markdown file is. She's not excited about that. And so I was about to take it and said, oh, okay, well, I can just copy and paste it over into Word and I can clean up the formatting. Whoa, hang on, stop. Opened up a VS Code session, said, hey, I need you to create a markdown to Microsoft Word converter for me. And sure enough, it created one. First version was a little ugly. I said, oh, no, you're not doing the headers correctly. Do the headers correctly. Ran it. Sure enough, it got me much faster. And then, oh, you're not numbering the bullet points. I want them in bullet points, not in numbered lists. All right, rerun it. It does it. It's fine. And it's like, holy smokes, this thing is, whereas I would have spent an hour and a half cleaning up a bunch of documents for her so that she would have them for her classes, I spent 15 minutes coding something that I've been able to reuse a couple of times since then, just off of that process. Let me show you one step beyond that where I'm doing this in production today. I use this. I use this utility in production all the time right now. But I'll show you another couple of utilities that I've created. This one was actually. Let me show you the other one first. Um, Inside of Dataverse, there's a whole thing where the name of a field um, is oftentimes you want to have the name formatted in a certain way, and you either have to write some JavaScript or you have to write some code behind the scenes or do a workflow or something like that. I've been doing that for 20 years, doing it the hard way. I basically stopped and said, let me just build a utility for it and create this, and it's now published it. It's in production as well as shared it to the community so other people can use it, and other people are taking advantage of this. They said, it's not a hard problem to solve every time, but it's an annoying thing that you just kind of have to do over and over and over again. Now, using this utility, it's like a couple of clicks and you're done. And again, it wouldn't be worth it to me to have to either learn to code or pay somebody to code that. And it wasn't important enough to anybody else to build it when it required a lot of effort. But now that the effort is really only on the side of articulating what you want, the whole dynamic or the whole measurement stick changes so fast. Internally, we use yeah, I want to make sure I'm in training modes because this is all sample data. Um, Internally, we use Dynamics for some work that we do, keeping track of what's going on. And I had a whole model-driven app up until, it was like last week. That was what they were going to use. They're going to model-driven app, and we had this cohort of about 1,000 users that would have to go into this model-driven app once a month, maybe click on 10 things, and then get out. And then a month later, they'd have to go back in and do it again and probably forget exactly how to do it. Probably, be frustrated with it because it was annoying having to go through it. Friday afternoon, this week, last Friday afternoon, um, it's kind of one of those things where I keep forgetting the the utility and the power that we have in our hands now. But like last week, I said, "Oh, wait a minute. What if I built a front end utility that would keep track of this thing that I'm doing in the model driven app, and just build a front end using React and just code it like that?" Literally within 45 minutes, I had a working solution, and I spent the next 8 hours making little enhancements, little improvements, and saying, "Oh, what if it did this? What if I can make adjustments? And I can make an adjustment here and make adjustment, and then update update Dataverse with this change, and keep the surface area really simple and clean, so that my end users, all they have to deal with is one little app that sort of walks them through what they need to work on, and it keeps it simple. It's easy to use, and hopefully it's not nearly as annoying as what I was about to be putting in front of them. The whole idea was to say, let's make it simple so that they can interact, and they can manage what they're working on, what their teams are working on over time, and we'll quickly be able to address what's happening and approve things and be able to be on their way, and then forget about it for another month. Again, this is going into production next week, and it didn't exist Friday afternoon of last week. It's just a transformative process that we're in. I've kind of been talking nonstop, and I really haven't been able to see if there's anybody had thrown up questions or ideas. I'd love to hear what you guys are working on, or what's interesting to you. Are you seeing experiences like that? Is what I'm saying, does it sound like crazy talk, or have you run across experience in your own orgs? I'll pause. Bueller, Bueller,
There's always that
anyone?
8 second pause, right? You always give it the 8 seconds of silence. Be like, no, moving on if nobody's talking in 8 seconds.
Yeah. Scott, I know that on your side of the house, you're seeing the shift of the demand and the shift of opportunity. I assume so. Is that right?
100%. Yeah, absolutely. We've it's definitely become a lot more of an employer's market these days, but there's still some pockets that and some skill sets that are in higher demand. So
Hmm. And it's the unfortunate thing is there's probably some employers who are potential hires that go, oh, we just got to have somebody that knows AI that can solve these things for us.
I think Carl has a hand up here.
Carl, man, go for it, Carl.
Yeah, thank you. So a question about the slide here. It says
Yeah.
power of actually. Is that in the prompt or like what does that mean? And apologies if you covered that.
No, it's good. It's the power actually was really my idea of like, how some people go, well, actually, it's this.
Yeah.
It's really the idea of looking at what the tool produces, and then reacting to it and going, all right, that's close, but actually, if you did it this way, if you added the button, or you moved it to the right hand side, or you simplified this, or whatever. Well, actually, it would be better if it was like this. If you were doing that back and forth with a coworker, the coworker would be slamming the door on your face after a while, really quickly. The intern that might be doing this for you would be just get tired of you, looking at stuff and going, huh, well, actually, if it would do this, it would be really cool. That would just be the most annoying thing ever to have to deal with somebody doing that to you. But honestly, the funny thing is, Claude, Opus, GPT-5, GPT, they don't get tired of you. You can just say that over and over and say, "Hey, let's make some iterations on it. Let's fix this, or let's try it this way, or maybe we tried it that way. I don't like it. Let's go back to the way we had it before." You can do that nonstop with this, and it never gets. I mean, it never gets irritated. At least not that I can tell. Um, I guess
Yeah,
I guess eventually the
it
machines
doesn't.
will let me know.
My first real experience with using Claude was I had to do dynamic SQL for the first time in probably 15 years, and it'd been
Yeah,
a while. And Claude didn't get tired. Claude didn't get annoyed. I just we just kind of worked through it, and I had to relearn the whole process. But it was also because I took me a while to figure out what I needed to get to, and so that was handy. Uh, but you're right about the slamming the door. I mean, I was just thinking, like, just literally today working with a customer, and we had that aha moment. And that's the thing too, is that they were the ones saying, actually, this is actually what I want.
yeah,
And then we got to that point. It's like, oh, and so I was pretty happy that we actually had finally gotten to this. Like everyone actually understood.
yeah, yeah,
So I mean, you can't stop asking. That's for sure.
yeah. And the challenge is with if you're providing the service, or if you're the one asking for service, those iterations they're super valuable, but they can become expensive if it's just back and forth between two people. This whole process actually does give you some flexibility and some speed to move forward faster, quicker.
Yeah.
The quality control, um, your eye of it is super important, because hey, the code will come back and go, I fixed it for you, or it's working now. All my tests came back clean. Everything passed. And then you open it up and then you drill a little harder on it and go, oh wait, no, this thing is broken. You come back to it and say, by the way, your test didn't cover for this use case. Oh, you're right. Great. Let me add that to my test bank. And it goes on and fixes it. But it really does take you not accepting it, carte blanche, or on the other side going, I don't know if I can use this because it's doing stuff that I don't understand. The in between is that sweet spot of where you go, I understand it. I'm testing it. I can prove that it works. I know what it's trying to do, and I can make it happen. And if I have a problem, I know how to ask for a fix on that. That's super incredibly important on that. This afternoon, and I'll tell you the other thing that's been crazy is this afternoon I was working on the application that I showed you just now, and we're getting ready to launch it. Let me change back to that. F11. We're getting ready to launch it, and inevitably, somebody says, "Oh, by the way, we need some documentation for this." Oh crap! Writing documentation is about the last thing I want to spend my afternoon doing. It's like pulling teeth. I mean, I want to spend time writing documentation just about as much as I want to spend time reading documentation. But it was important we had it, and so I opened up the project, and let's see, yeah. So yeah, let me go through it. Yeah. So I want to overhaul and refresh the user guide. You can see my prompt here. Keep it light. Don't drill into every feature. We don't want to scare off the end users. Kick that off into it. It looked at the code. It looked at what the actual code did, and it wrote my user test cases. It wrote my user guide of how to use the product. It wrote a presentation for me so that I can introduce the product. I just gave it some guidance along the way and said, here it is. Here's what it looks like. I guess I can back up even a little further, and you can see. Let me zoom back a little bit. Yeah, sorry, I don't want to bore you with all this, but basically just come back and said, all right, I'm trying to build this documentation. Write the documentation for me. It produced it, and I said, okay, reorder these two parts. I want you to focus on this part first, and then focus on the second part. And at the end of the day, all I had to do is come back and say, I'll show you what it produced for me. All I did was take what it produced and threw some screenshots into it, and I had working documentation for it for the end users so they can have it. And I don't have to answer the question of where's the documentation for this thing. I just noticed my thing starting over. So anyway, I'll fix that. Which is, kind of crazy that it's allowing me to do that so quickly. But yeah, it's honestly, it's mind-boggling. And the part of it that's been fun has been, like I was talking about my team lead this afternoon, I said, I almost opened up Microsoft Word and started writing documentation this afternoon. I said I was so close to clicking on a new Word document, but then I paused and said, let me back up and just try to ask VS Copilot. And I'm talking about, when I use Copilot, I'm talking about using Copilot in the, I'm using against GPT 5.4 here in the command line. I'm using the CLI to use it, and just saying, hey, this is what I need. Here's what I want you to create. Look at the code, look at what the code does, and then build my documentation for that. And it was done in, the first version was done in like 7 minutes, and that would have taken me 3 hours, and I would have been miserable at the end of that 3 hours. I would have been fit to be tied by that. So I'm going to pause there and just say, thank you guys for hanging in with me. I hope this has been encouraging, challenging, interesting, because honestly, the change in the delta of what we had 6 months ago versus what we have now is dramatic. And don't wait to feel like you have to become an expert on AI or become an expert on all the buzzwords that people are throwing out left, right, and center. Just take a problem that you work on, something you're passionate about, something you got experience with. Try to automate it. Try to build something out for yourself. And I think you will be surprised at how fast and how far you can go with it. So I'll pause there and thank you guys for your kind attention. Hopefully I hopefully this is all right for you.
No, it
But
was. I was thinking of this. I was watching this German guy speaking, and I got a new term. He called it embedded AI, and it's really kind of what I've been waiting for a long time. And I honestly have not researched to see if that's the true term, but essentially, I worked in manufacturing a lot, and so
mhm,
what he was calling embedded AI was where that you have the equipment being smarter. It's kind of an evolution of agentic AI. And
right.
so, because I remember working in a manufacturing plant where they had a lot of overheating with the conveyor belts. And so I went through and spec'd out the whole thing. Essentially, it was just creating alerts to report to the control center that if you had
Yeah.
temperature sensors and they would know because they were having fires in this one area.
Oh,
And so he's saying that now AI has evolved to the point where theoretically you could have something go there and slow down the conveyor belt or change something in order to make that work. And that was exciting because I like doing manufacturing. And so here I'm seeing where AI could really help evolve things. And
yeah.
that's the whole thing is you got to find something that you're excited about and then you just do that.
Try it out. You'll be shocked. Again, I come at it from not being. I am not a tech bro. AI pretend want to be influencer or anything. That's just not me. I'm just telling you, I'm like freaked out, excited by the kind of problems that I can solve now that I couldn't solve before. And so I hope that you'll try it and you'll experience the same thing.
Yeah, you like you said, fire from the gods. I mean,
Yeah, the
God's
Prometheus.
called it a force multiplier. But I mean, either way, there's a lot of potential there.
Yeah, yeah. But the side of it that I do encourage everybody in this group, you're interested in something, you're passionate about something, you've got expertise that you may not realize. Um, I hope that you realize that it's unique and special, and you've got experience in some weird thing that you could bring your experience and actually create a solution off of that in a way that you couldn't before.
Yep.
So anyway, I'll pause here and thanks so very much, everybody. And I'll turn it back over to you, Michael. And hope you guys have a great evening.